Hi, it's great to see all your smiling faces here on the YouTubes. Can you make serious music in a home studio? This is where my studio is. So before I moved to Nashville, I was in Peoria, Illinois, and I had a huge studio right downtown in a huge warehouse building. The studio was like 2,600 square foot. It was enormous. But when I moved here, I realized I was gonna have to make some real serious sacrifices to get in town and get my feet under me. So I've only got 1 week left in this studio before I move into the new place. But what I really wanna talk about is, can you make serious music in a home studio? And what does it actually take to make serious music in a home studio? For a long time, I was on the side of the fence where I didn't really think that you could make super serious music in a home studio. I thought you had to have a big space, a commercial space. There's a few limitations for having a home studio for sure. Status being one of them. Carrie Underwood's not gonna come to your home studio more than likely to record. So you do run up against some status issues. That said, you can absolutely make really serious music in a home studio. So I want to take you guys inside and show you what I think are the most important things to make great, super high quality music inside of a home studio. Let's do that now. Oh, sometimes you got to improvise because the lighting isn't always awesome. This is my apartment building. Whoa, stay back, buddy. Here's Nico. This is the studio puppy. Say hi, buddy. He's like, what are you doing with that thing in my face? This is my apartment. It's a mess. We got boxes everywhere. We're packing up. But this is my apartment. And it's where I first moved when I first came to Nashville. Set up my room. So, here is the studio that you all see all the time on Instagram, on Facebook. But what a lot of you don't see is actually how small this room is. There's the backside, right behind me. There's my photo lights. I have a lot of people asking me what kind of lighting I use, and that's it. It's just cheap shopped lights from Home Depot or from Lowe's. But anyway, so this is the studio. This room is about 12 by 12 or 12 by 14. Got some microphones set up. I got that's a catch-all closet because this room is so small. Just everything gets thrown in here. So we got, that's my ISO cab here. I built this ISO cab before I moved because I knew that I was gonna wind up in an apartment. Camera bag, toolbox for work, just a total catch-all room. And rack of speakers for the ISO cab, so I have lots of different options. And then rack of guitars, some good tools, my first iconic guitar right here, one of my favorites, my second iconic guitar right here, one of my favorites. So that's the studio. I knew that I just had to get here and just make the best of it. In one of my podcast episodes, I talked about how it's important to suck before you can have success. And basically what that podcast was about is about the people who are afraid of sucking so bad that they never get started. They're afraid of not having the ultimate setup, the ultimate gear, the ultimate whatever, and they never get started. And this setup right here was a real big one for me to get over, because when I first moved here, I was super self-conscious about having a home studio and even more self-conscious about it being in an apartment, but I didn't have a choice. I had to get down here and make it work. So, moved to town, set this up. All of this acoustic treatment is just hung on like those little gorilla hooks or whatever you call them that you just push through the drywall. So when I pack this room up here, in like 3 days, I'm shutting this room down to move to the new studio. It's gonna take me all of like 12 seconds to take all of these acoustic panels off the walls, and this whole room will just pack up and be right out the door. So I wanna go over some things that I think are super important to make a home studio really work. This room right here, I've made the best music of my entire career in. I've charted on Billboard out of this room. I've had multiple #1s on iTunes and a whole bunch of other radio charts. I've made really successful music right here in this room. And I've worked on music for some pretty successful artists right here in this room. So I want to go over some things that I think are super important in order to make this work, in order to have a setup at home, at your home, and make it work. What's the most important things in this room that allows me to work at the level that I'm working at in a small home studio room? I think the most important thing that gets overlooked is that you right there, you watching, you're the most important piece. You're the most important piece of gear. You're the most important everything. You are what makes this work. I am what makes this work. Your skill set and the decisions that you make, the choices that you make in mixing and in producing, and the performances that you're able to lay down, the performances that you're able to pull out of the artists, that's the most important thing. All the rest of it is secondary to that one thing. You're the most important part. The second most important thing, in my opinion, is acoustic treatment. This is a small room, and as some of you know, the smaller the room, the more problems you can have with how the room sounds. It's one of the reasons why there's been a lot of debate over the years about whether or not you can make serious music in a home studio. So acoustic treatment is the second most important thing. You're definitely the most important thing, but acoustic treatment is very easily the next most important thing. If you want to treat your room a little better, just Google first reflection points acoustic treatment and take a look at that. And basically what it's talking about is the sound comes out of the speakers and the sound hits your ears. But the sound also goes to the ceiling and hits your ears. And the sound also hits the walls and hits your ears. And the sound also goes behind the speakers and hits your ears. And so there's all these different ways that sound bounces out of the speakers and hits your ears. And when it does that, it all hits your ears at a different time, because it takes a different amount of time for the sound to go straight from the speakers to your ears, or to hit the ceiling and come to your ears, or to hit the walls and come to your ears. That time that it takes to do that is different for every direction. So what you want to do is you want to get broadband absorption, and broadband absorption is not like Auralex, like not the foam stuff, because foam doesn't absorb down very low. It doesn't really absorb below the low mid frequencies, and it definitely doesn't do anything for the low end. So what you want to do is you want to get some real broadband acoustic. There's a whole bunch of companies that make these panels. I've been working with Music City Acoustics here in Nashville. Shout out to them. They're helping me out with my fabric for my new room. I'm designing my new room right now. But they make panels just like this, just like these panels you see in here, and they look great. They do a great job. But there's a whole bunch of companies that do this exact sort of thing. And so what you want to do is you want to Google acoustic treatment first reflection points. And then you want to get in your room, wherever it is that you make music, however big or small it is, and you want to make sure you have real broadband absorption, not foam, that covers all those first reflection points. And that's the starting point. If you do that and you really actually cover all those first reflection points, you're going to be like 10 times better than most people that work on music in the country or in the world. Most people, like if we're looking at a percentage, most people don't even have that covered. However, all of the professionals have that covered. Everyone who makes serious music, everyone who works on successful music has their acoustic treatment 100% on point. So start there. First reflection points, acoustic treatment. Start with that. Great acoustic treatment, broadband acoustic treatment that absorbs down to at least down to 100 hertz. You're going to have some issues with the low end in a smaller room, and most home studios are in a smaller room. You're going to have some issues with that, but you can learn the room. We'll get back to that. Depending on what it is that you're actually doing, the next most important thing that I could possibly say is microphones and preamps. The front end of the recording process, what you're singing into, what you're playing guitar into, whatever it is that you're actually recording in your room. The front end, which is just the microphone and the microphone preamp, those are super, super, super important. All of the plugins and all of the EQs and compressors and all the things that are super fun to have and really good to have when mixing all of those pale in comparison to the front end, to how well something is recorded. So after you've got your acoustic treatment in and your room sounds good, as you can hear right now, this microphone on this camera is not the greatest microphone, but this is a really good sounding room, especially for a small room. I've spent my time getting it treated, but then immediately after that, I have great microphones, and I'm running through great microphone preamps. And so what I'm able to capture in here, when I have a singer in this room and I'm having them sing and I'm producing them and recording them, the sonic quality that I'm able to capture in here is top shelf, because I have top shelf microphones and top shelf preamps. So that is the very next thing that I think is super important to have a home studio that you can make really serious music out of and work on successful music out of, is great microphones and great preamps. After that, it's really important to learn your room. It's very important to learn your room. Every single room has different characteristics. I'm getting ready to move into my new studio. It's enormous. It's 4 or 5 times the size of this room, just for the control room. It's going to be super well treated. It's going to be super well tuned. I'm going to really take my time and tune it. I'm still going to have to learn it, because even as good as this room is treated and as good as that room is treated, there's going to be some different sonic characteristics. And it takes a little bit of time to wrap your head around that and really learn how to make mixes that translate and how to record in a way that sounds great within your room. Even just the placement of a microphone for vocals. If I'm tracking vocals in here, I'm super conscious of where I put that microphone and what direction I'm facing the singer and all of those things, because every corner of this room sounds different. And so experimenting with that sort of stuff and really, really digging into what your room sounds like in what positions, and maybe this spot's better to record acoustic guitar, but the singer is better to sing over here. Really experimenting with that and learning that sort of stuff is really important and goes a super long way in terms of you creating really high quality music and getting great sounds and getting the recordings really, really great within your room. The next thing I think is very important and often overlooked and not really talked about too much is that you should, whatever situation you're in, whatever pieces of gear that you have, you should know them inside and out and know how to make the absolute most of what you have to work with. One of my issues with people who, aside from the ethical portion of cracking plugins, one of my issues with people who will get, like, the Waves Mercury bundle, and next thing you know, there's someone who doesn't really have much experience in recording or mixing, and they've got thousands of plugins. My main issue with that is you will never become a master of all of those plugins. You can barely even get to know them all, because there's so many options that you can't possibly really truly master all of them, at least in any sort of realistic time frame. So understanding the tools that you have and understanding how to use them to their absolute fullest potential is one of the most important things. Knowing exactly when to use what preamp, knowing exactly when to use what microphone. I've got a handful of different microphones for different singers, and every singer sounds different on different microphones. I've got a Bronner, it's sitting right over the top of the camera here. It's a fantastic microphone. Those Bronners are amazing. Every once in a while, someone comes in here and they sound like trash on that microphone because it's not the right tool for them. And so being able to identify that, knowing all the tools that you have and knowing exactly when to use them and how to use them is one of the most important things in creating good, high quality music that has a chance of being successful. And that's something that is it's not dependent on what room you're in or the size of your room. Knowing your tools is the same level of importance regardless of what size room you're in. And it's really important. So I said this was going to be a studio tour, and it is a little bit, but I guess you probably want to actually see some gear. So I'm going to go through some of my gear, some of my favorites, and what I use them for most often. All right, so here's that Bronner that I was talking about. This one is a Bronner Panthera. Sorry, the backlight's on because I'm still filming. This is a Bronner Panthera. It's a really great sounding microphone. Lots of air, lots of sizzle, great high end. The trusty old SM7B, of course, you can't really go wrong with that. I've got a Perlman TM47 in the closet and a couple more. We've got a Third Power Citizen Gain CSR and a Friedman Small Box 50. This is the Wildwood edition with 3 channels. These are actually clients' amps that have been here for a while. Talked about some guitars already, of course, so those are awesome. As far as rack gear goes, I've got a Universal Apollo 16 Mark II. Fantastic interface for mixing. I run all of my hardware through that while mixing, and it's done really good for me. So I've got a pair of Cappy hiders here. These live on my mix bus. Everything that I mix goes through these. I also record guitars and vocals and all kinds of stuff with them. They have kind of an aggressive forward mid-range, and the low end extends really deep. I love them. They sound great. My Serpent SB4001 lives on my mix bus. That's my mix bus compressor. Fantastic compressor. Next, we've got my Cappy VP28 Platinum. Really, really great preamp for all kinds of stuff. Fantastic on acoustic guitar, fantastic on vocals, on electrics, on bass guitar. The DI sounds fantastic. It's one of my all-time favorite preamps. I need to get another one very soon. This is my kick chain right here. We've got a Cappy LC40, and this is my kick EQ and a Cappy FC526 compressor, so kick, EQ, and compressor. Next in line, we've got my Cappy LC25 and FC526. This is my snare chain here, snare EQ, snare compressor. These EQs sound ridiculously good, and they have a lot of weight to them. They're nice and thick sounding. The reason why I have 2 different ones is because the frequencies, I really like 200 hertz and 100 hertz on the snare drum, and I really like 80 hertz on a kick drum, and so that's why I have used them the way that I do. Next up is my vocal chain, Cappy BT50 and another Cappy FC526 compressor. This is based on an API EQ, ridiculous sounding EQ. It's absolutely fantastic. I love it on everything. I need to get another one of these. If you guys can't tell, I'm a fan of Cappy. I'm a big fan of Cappy stuff. Their stuff is ridiculous sounding. It's awesome. Next is my TubeTech LCA2B. This lives on my drum bus while I'm mixing, but I track vocals through this all the time. I track acoustic through it. Really, really great, smooth, transparent sounding preamp. A lot of people think it's sacrilegious, but I actually like that better than the CL1B, than the most famous TubeTech compressor. I really do like it better. We got a phantom power supply from Coil Audio for my coil pre's, hard drives, fabric colors when I'm trying to pick them out. I'm running Event Opals for my mains. I'm running NS10s for, I use these a lot. I just really love how my mixes translate when I'm using NS10s. And of course the Oratones, the 5Cs, these are new production 5Cs. I use them on every single mix. I love them. This is the power amp I'm currently running for the Oratones, and my monitor controller is the Drummer. Really great feature set in a monitor controller for not that much money. Running Audio-Technica M50 headphones, a couple dual monitors. These are just, I get asked about these all the time. These are just regular computer monitors that I've taken the mount off of, and I've set them up against the monitor bridge that I've made myself. So I get asked about that all the time. Got a complete control keyboard here, tons of pedals. I love these Lauren Audio pedals. Really into this Storpy FX pedal right here. Yeah, cool pedals. And my pair of Coil Audio preamps. These are the CA70S. Really dig them. Fantastic preamps. I use them a ton on acoustic guitar and on electric guitar, and they're really great for that. Kind of showed you guys all my guitars earlier. I wore this hole in this one myself. This is an Alvarez Bob Weir model. Love this guitar a lot. Have a few other Paul Reed Smiths and Fenders, and there's a Warwick bass back there, and so anyway. So that's what I'm rocking, and these are the things. Basically what I've done is I've tried to narrow down what piece of gear is going to make the biggest impact in what I do. And then when I figure out what that piece of gear is, that's my next purchase. And then after that purchase, I figure out what's my next piece of gear that makes the biggest impact on what it is that I do. And then that becomes the next purchase. And I've just run this circle round and round and round and round. And so that's what I've come up with, is as long as my mix bus, my kick drum, my snare drum, and my vocal and my drum bus are all hardware, I don't feel like I'm held back, I'm not limited. So I'm full hybrid here, and that's what I've deemed as the best thing. I think I've showed this off already, but this is literally like my baby. Like, this iconic guitar here, this is my new number one. I've only had this a few weeks, but man, is it a sweet, sweet guitar. I do think it's important to be inspired by your tools. I think it's important to enjoy what you do, and sometimes the tools that we use are part of that enjoyment. Don't ever be afraid to start doing what you're doing because of your physical location or because of the gear that you have. However, be conscious of how you can fill in those holes, those gaps in your workflow, those gaps in your quality level, and do your best to fill those in. Get you some acoustic treatment. Realize that you are the most important part to this whole thing. So work on your craft, work on your own skills, practice. Practice makes perfect. We have to practice all of this stuff. It takes time, it takes hours spent. I really hope that helps someone. Love it if you'd subscribe to the channel. Really, really love it. Hit the bell icon next to it to get notified when I post new videos. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you think. I really hope to help someone. Thanks so much for watching.